Shalom, giving all praises to the Heavenly Father, Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Ruach HaKodesh. Double honors to the apostles, the bishops, and the elders at Great Millstone who rule well. Peace and salutations, as always, to the elect. We're going to go to the comment board, all right, of this latest video that I did yesterday, Casting Down Imaginations, Candace Owens, Book of Enoch, Babel, all right, and Gilgamesh, right? And as usual, when we go into these topics, it ruffles feathers and individuals leave comments, all right? And as you can see, the title of this video, all right, 21 questions in an empty page, all right? Because this individual, Law and Order 020, left a bunch of comments, and we're going to deal with it, all right, so that we can bring out edification. I'm not trying to convert this individual. These are the type of individuals that sit back, they watch, and as you can see, his page has been here since 2013, and with all of the information he claims to know, he has not loaded one video to teach anybody, okay? But he's on my page teaching and asking question after question after question after question, okay? And we're going to deal with some of his questions, and hopefully it can bring edification, all right, to someone who is sincere, who may have one of the same questions, all right? Now, within this video, we went into a few things. We talked about, how the word giant in the book of Genesis, the 6th chapter, it wasn't speaking of a literal giant. Now, men were bigger before the flood, okay? But the word giant has more of a poetic, all right, and spiritual symbolism, as the book of Genesis, all right, which the first 5 books, the Torah, all right, are written, all right, and heavily coded in spiritual symbolism, right? We have to understand Moses went up to the mount, all right, and for 40 days and 40 nights, he received the information that we know as the Torah and gave it to us in a very abridged form, all right? And the way that it is written, the reader then has to be spiritual, okay? It's not written in a way where everything is explained line by line, point by point, right? A lot of it is abridged. A lot of it is coded, all right, to keep individuals who are not of the elect out of the fold, all right? And we also have to know and understand that everything wasn't given to us that was given unto Moses. As a matter of fact, we'll start there, okay? In the book of 2nd Esdras, the 14th chapter, in the 3rd verse, then he said unto me, in the bush I did manifestly reveal myself unto Moses, and talked with him when my people served in Egypt. And I sent him and led my people out of Egypt, and brought him up to the mount where I held him by me a long season. And I told him many wondrous things, and showed him the secrets of the times and the end, and commanded him, saying, these words shalt thou declare, and these words shalt thou hide. Okay? So there are particular things we have that Moses was given, and there's particular things that he was given that we don't have. Okay? So what we do have is enough, all right, to apply faith, all right, and to know our origin in the heavens as it translated to the earth with Adam, all right, and needed history, all right, and a foundation. That's why it's known as the Torah, Tharawah, okay, the law. And pretty much a lot of people get tripped up on Moses' writings and the way that things are explained. Okay, when they see the word giant, they automatically, it has to be linked to some, 2,000 to 4,000 feet tall individuals stomping on people. No, it wasn't really talking about that. But again, yes, men were bigger, men and women. Creation, everything was bigger before the flood. Things did get smaller, and that's explained in the Apocrypha as well, how we have gotten weaker with age. But let's deal with a few of these questions. We know for sure we can't go to his page and get his breakdown um, or learn any goddamn thing. So, all right, 21 questions in an empty page. Child of God, all right, law and order, all right, with an empty page, okay? And this is what these individuals do. They sit back and they watch, and certain things they agree with, so they'll make subscribe and watch and keep watching, all right, until ultimately the Heavenly Father puts a spirit on us to say something, all right, so that they can what? Right? What happens is it draws out their folly, it draws out their anger, all right? And then they start to come up against the men of the Lord, and they don't understand that they're marking themselves, all right? Because if you really were putting forth law and order, you be on the forefront making your body a living sacrifice. Okay, we're in the game. Okay, what the hell are you doing? Okay, and here it is, you boasting in all of this deep knowledge, but you can't, all right, set yourself up to put forth one lesson to teach the children of Israel. Anyway, we're going to deal with this individual. Law and Order 020. I have a question about the sons of God. There wasn't a nation of Israel in Genesis, the 6th chapter. Okay, well, of course there wasn't a nation of Israel. The nation of Israel was not established, all right, until Abraham had Isaac and Isaac had Jacob. Jacob's name was changed to Israel. Okay, so how can it be that the sons of God was the righteous nation when Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob wasn't even thought of yet? And this just shows me you're on a lower level, right? And I'm not, insulting you by, out of pride, but, as I'm reading your comments, well, you need to explain this, you need to explain that. Well, the sons of God was a righteous nation. When we get the book of Genesis, the 5th chapter, okay, the descendants of Adam, Genesis 5:1, this is the book of the generations of Adam. In the day that God created man, in the likeness of God made he him. Okay? Male and female created he them and blessed them and called their name Adam in the day that they were created. So man being created in the image of the Most High and the Elohim started with Adam. Okay? And no, Adam was not the first man on the earth. Adam represented the first man, okay, on earth to receive the wisdom. And we have videos going into that. Okay. Again, when Adam had Cain and Abel, where did Cain go find a wife? All right, if they were the only two people on the planet Earth. Okay. Anyway, this is the book of the generations. Let's look up the word generations. All right. Tha wa la da wath. All right. Descendants, result, proceedings, generations, genealogies, account of men and their descendants, genealogical list of one's descendants, one's contemporaries, course of history. All right. Begetting or account, descendant. Okay, so let's go back and read it again. This is the book of the generations of Adam. And the day that God created man in the likeness of God made he him. Male and female created he them and blessed them and called their name Adam in the day when they were created. Okay? And Adam lived 130 years and begot a son in his own likeness, in his own image, and called his name Seth. All right? And if you keep reading, all right, and the days of Adam after he had begotten Seth were 800 years, and he begot sons and daughters. So Adam had other sons and daughters that we don't know about. See, there's a lot ultimately that is not written and given unto us. We have what we need to know. We're on a need to know basis with the Most High God. We have what we need to know to establish faith. But when we get into the kingdom, we're going to see everything. Everything's going to be given unto us. Okay? It says, and all the days that Adam lived were 930 years, and he died. And he had what? Seth, because Abel was slew. Seth had Enos. All right? And Seth lived after that, and he begot Enos 800 years and 807 years, and begot sons and daughters. So all of these men have a bunch of sons and daughters, and they're having sons and daughters. Okay, this is a nation of people. These are the sons of God. This is a lineage. Okay? And as you keep reading, this lineage, all right, leads to Canaan, Mahalalel. It leads to Enoch, the one who was beamed up. All right, the book you the one you are trying to attribute this book, all right, that was written during the second temple history, all right, in the Medo-Persian captivity leading into the Greek captivity. You want to attribute those writings to Enoch. Okay? Now, it says here, and Jared lived after he begot Enoch 800 years, and he begot sons and daughters. Okay? As you keep reading, it leads up to Methuselah. As you keep reading, it leads up to Noah. Right? This is a lineage. This is a nation of people. These are the sons of God. Okay? Who did it start with? Adam. Okay? Cain himself was a nation of people. As you read Genesis, the 4th chapter, just like Jacob and Esau were two nations, Cain and Abel became two nations. And the Heavenly Father is able to do that. Out of the same man, Adam, came two nations, just like out of the same man, Isaac, came two nations. Okay? And although Cain and Abel weren't twins like Jacob and Esau, right? They came out of the same man. And you have many myths talking about, well, Cain was the serpent, and Eve has sex and they created Cain. No, it tells you Adam knew Eve, his wife, and she conceived, and he bare Cain. Okay? And as you read this chapter, Cain himself has a lineage. Genesis 4:17. And Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bare Enoch, which is, all right, the same name, but it's coming through a different man. It's not the same seed that we just read about in Genesis, the 5th chapter. So we have both a wicked lineage being recorded, okay, and Enoch there was bare Mahalalel and Lamech. You see some of the names are similar, right? But one represents, all right, because what does the scripture say about Cain? He's the wicked one. Okay? 1 John 3:12, not as Cain, who was of that wicked one, and slew his brother. Why did he slew him? Because his own works were evil and his brothers were righteous. Okay? So Cain has a lineage here. He becomes a nation with offspring. Okay? And through Adam, okay, since Abel was slew in his stead, all right, we find out here in Genesis, the 4th chapter, after Abel was slew, and Adam knew his wife again, and she bare a son and called his name Seth. For God said she hath appointed me another seed instead of Abel, who came slew. And to Seth, to him also there was born a son, and he called his name Enos. Then began men to call upon the name of the Lord. All right, because ultimately this was the lineage, all right, that will what? Keep the commandments. All right, because Adam was given a commandment. All right, though he later transgressed. All right, the breath of life was breathed unto him. That was the Most High making him in his image. Okay? Second Esdras 3:7, and unto him thou gavest commandment, to Adam thou gavest commandment to love thy way, which he transgressed. And immediately thou appointest death in him and his generations, of whom came nations, tribes, people, and kindreds out of number. Okay, this is before Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And everyone walked after their own will and did wonderful things before thee, and despised thy commandments. This is what we're reading about in Genesis, the 6th chapter. As we'll get it, because he had other questions. But everybody was walking after their own will and despising the commandments. That's why, all right, if you're listening, all right, hopefully you're listening. That's why in Genesis, the 5th chapter, it's giving you notable names who fought, all right, even through the fall, to stick to the righteous way. Right? This leads up, this righteous lineage that's being recorded, these generations of Adam, right, that is being recording, leads up to Enoch, leads up to Lamech, leads up to Methuselah, which leads up to Noah. Noah had Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Okay? If you're tracking what's happening here, after the flood, Shem, Ham, and Japheth repopulated the earth. Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth repopulated the earth with their wives. Genesis 11, okay, records the first kingdom after the flood that tried to rebel against the Most High, the Tower of Babel. And immediately after it was destroyed, it gives you the descendants of Shem who are continuing that righteous way. Okay? As many of the sons of God were going off, Noah was the one, okay, as we read 2nd Esdras, the 3rd chapter, right? And everyone walked after their own will and did wonderful things before thee and despised thy commandments. And again, in a process of time, thou broughtest the flood upon those that dwelt in the world and destroyedest them. And it came to pass, all right, and every one of them, that death, as death was to Adam, so was the flood unto these. All right, they started to suffer because of the fall. Okay, and that in itself with Adam is a whole lot of history condensed into a small chapter. Okay, nevertheless, one of them, one of who? One of the sons of God, thou leftest, namely Noah with his household, of who came all righteous men. See that? And it happened that when they dwelt on the earth and began to multiply and had begotten many children and were great people, they began again to become more ungodly than the first. Now, when they lived so wickedly before thee, thou did choose thee a man from among them, from among the sons of God, whose name was Abraham. And then him thou lovest, and unto him showest thy will, and madest an everlasting covenant with him, promise him that thou wilt never forsake his seed. And unto him thou gavest Isaac, and unto Isaac thou gave Jacob and Esau. As for Jacob, thou didst choose him to thee, and you put by Esau. So Jacob became a great multitude. That right there explains everything that you're asking. Okay? Noah had Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Shem was the chosen of the three. Shem had Arphaxad. Okay, these are the descendants of Adam through Seth, right, leading up to Noah, all right, now through Shem. Shem had Arphaxad, right? See, a lot of people just read over these genealogies and think it's just a bunch of names. No, it's giving you a lineage that led to your ass. Okay? Nations didn't just start at the time of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. What Abraham represented of this lineage, all right, because when you go into it, these men were the Eber, all right, is where you get the word Hebrew. Okay? Peleg means division. When you go into the history, basically, During the Tower of Babel, there was, all right, a remnant sticking to the original way. This is why we still have the Hebrew. This is why we still have the name of the Lord, because of these men fighting and keeping, okay, the righteous way. Okay, but as you keep going down, we find out that once you get down to Nahor and Terah, which was Abraham's father, this lineage started to fall away again, right? Terah, we know in the book of Joshua, was an idol worshiper. He still belongs to that lineage, but he is an idol worshiper. And this is where we get Abraham, whom the Lord showed his will and his way, okay, and made a promise unto him, okay, and eventually, okay, had Isaac and Jacob. And all of these righteous men we read about would eventually return as Israelites, all right, through Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, man. Okay? So going back to your question, I have a question about the sons of God. There wasn't a nation of Israel in Genesis 6. So how can it be that the sons of God was a righteous nation when Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob wasn't even thought of yet? Because you stated the sons of God wasn't supposed to mix with the other nations when there wasn't nations yet. And the Most High didn't give them that law yet. Well, we know here Adam was given a law. Adam was given a commandment. And as we keep reading, everyone was walking after their own will and despised the commandments because the commandments weren't written yet. They were oral. Okay, it was oral traditions. Okay? And when you look through the book of Genesis, all right, before the law was given, all right, let me give you an example. Okay, let's get the book of Genesis, the 8th chapter. Let's get Genesis 8, I believe that's where it's at. Let's get Genesis, the 8th chapter. All right, give me 1 second. This is Genesis 7, all right, and 1. When everything was ready, the Lord said to Noah, go into the boat with all your family, for among all the people of the earth, I can see that you alone are righteous. Okay? So of all of the sons of God, because when you go into it, Methuselah being the last of the righteous lineage to pass away, all right, that left Noah. Okay, and when you go into it, right, we've done the math, and the pre-Sha'ar went into it. We always go into it, all right. Methuselah, being the oldest man to ever live, died in the year of the flood. Okay, so none of the righteous died in that flood. Noah, all right, which, you know, there was a prophecy surrounding him. The prophecy surrounding him was that he would be the one that would comfort those who were toiling, all right, to keep, all right, the righteous way going, all right, because of the fall, all right, of Adam led to what? A curse, all right, just like we're under a curse right now, and we are of a generation who are fighting to keep the righteous traditions in the earth in our day. All right, that went on back then. Okay, and Noah was the one whom the Lord used so that righteousness could survive. Let's get that. Wisdom of Solomon, all right, the 14th chapter, okay, which goes into the history of Genesis, the 6th chapter. This is the book of Wisdom of Solomon 14:7. A blessing was on Noah's wooden boat that allowed righteousness to survive. But then it goes into a curses on an idol made by human hands, because our people, or as you read this chapter, the sons of God got into idolatry. All right, the gods of the other nations and the practices of the other nations, which led to what? Okay, what does it say? They were eating and drinking and being merry. All right, angels don't eat and drink. Okay, even in the book of Tobit, when the angel revealed himself, all right, Tobit and Tobias that he was an angel, Raphael. He said in verse 19, Tobit, all right, 12 and 19, when you thought you saw me eating, I did not really eat anything. It only seemed so. Okay? So angels don't eat, drink, and have sex. Okay? Angels can come on the earth and appear in the form of a man, right? But they are not the descendant or the offspring of a man and a woman. Just like when Melchizedek was on the earth, he was in his heavenly body. Okay? He didn't have a father and a mother. Raphael didn't have a father and a mother. The angels at the time of Abraham, they didn't have fathers and mothers, but they can come appearing like men. What you all are teaching, all right, as you tap into this Enochian garbage, is that angels came from heaven and had sex, all right, with women to create a race of people who survived the flood and are still here today. Anyway, going back to where we were, right? Genesis 7 and 1. And when everything was ready, the Lord said unto Noah, go into the boat with all your family, for among all the people of the earth, I can see that you alone are righteous. Take with you 7 pillars, male and female, of each animal I have approved for eating and for sacrifice. So we see here, before the Levitical law gave us the dietary law, okay, Noah somehow knows, all right, the difference between clean and unclean. See that? He knows about the sacrifice. See, when he gets off of the boat, okay, when he gets off of the boat, okay, let's see if we can get that. He immediately offered up a sacrifice. Okay, is it Genesis 8 or Genesis 9? There you go. Genesis 8 and 20. And then Noah built an altar to the Lord, and there he sacrificed as burnt offerings the animals and birds that had been approved for that purpose. Okay, so we can see that there was already, before there was a Levitical priesthood, there was already a priesthood. There was already a sacrifice. There was already the understanding of clean and unclean, what can be eaten and what cannot be eaten. Okay, there's even in the book of Genesis 38, all right, the Levirate law, where you're supposed to go, if a brother dies, you're supposed to go into his wife to raise up seed for the purpose of inheritance. Okay, that law was understood in Genesis 38 before the Levitical law was put in place. And I can go into so many laws, all right, that were established, all right, before we see the Levitical law, all right. And it only makes sense that Adam was given a law and it was passed down through his generations, right, of these men that we see here in Genesis, the 5th chapter. But not all of these men and women who are of this lineage stuck to that way. Okay, many of them got into idol worship, and this is where you can read the book of Wisdom of Solomon. Okay, the 14th chapter, and there's various other scriptures you can read. We always go into it. Okay, Genesis, this is Wisdom of Solomon 4 and 6. This is how it was in ancient times when a proud race of giants was dying away. Okay, and what happened to them? They got into idolatry, sexual immorality, eating, drinking, and being merry. There was men doing that, men and women. They got into sexual immorality. They got into corruption because they started to follow ways outside of what was commanded. But what was commanded wasn't written, okay, until ultimately we get to the time of Moses, where the Lord reintroduces himself to that seed, right, and pretty much establishes a covenant with them. Let's go back here. All right, so it says, because you stated the sons of God wasn't supposed to mix with the other nations when there wasn't nations yet. Okay, well, there was nations. Okay, an example, because when you hear about the trees in the garden, Okay, that's speaking of nations of people. The fruit is their ways, their doctrines. Okay, an example is used here. All right, speaking of the king of Assyria. Okay, Ezekiel 31:7. Thus he was fair in his greatness, in the length of his branches, for his roots was by great waters. The cedars in the garden of God could not hide him. The fir trees were not like his boughs. The chestnut trees were not like his branches, nor any tree in the garden of God was like unto him. All right. And his beauty, speaking of the king of Assyria, the garden represents the world, right? And basically, he was raised up as a ruler. I have made him fair by the multitude of his branches, so that all the trees of Eden that were in the garden of God envied him. So, is it talking about literal trees? Huh? Okay. Mark 8:24, and he looked up and said, I see men as trees walking. So these are nations, these are people on the earth, man. Okay? Point blank, period. Let's go to the next question. You say there was no giants. Why then was Israel afraid to take the land of Canaan? All right. Well, they were afraid because of unbelief. And you got to understand, I've been dealing with these very arguments that you are bringing forth for years. I'm going on my 20th year, that the Lord has brought me into this thing. Okay? You're not just dealing with a guy who don't know what the hell he's talking about, like you coming with something new and profound. When we deal with these, uh, uh, when we deal with Numbers, the 13th chapter, and I'm not saying this in pride. Usually I ignore you people's comments, man. But the spirit is on me to deal with this because there's there's a lot of people who sit and watch all our videos, and we post all these videos for years, and then they'll come with the same damn question. The giant thing. It's just like y'all want it to be some bugged out weird philosophy where giants fell from heaven and came and started hitting it from the back. Y'all want that. In a lot of you's minds, you really want that to be the truth of what we're reading about in Genesis, the 6th chapter. Hey, and the Lord knows, man. You better rid that leaven out of your spirit, man. Okay? So remember when Joshua and Caleb went and spied out the land, they came back and was like, look, we're ready to take these niggas. The land is flowing with, milk and honey. Okay? We can get it. We can take this. But then you have to understand there was other spies sent out and they were scared. So as we get Numbers 13:27, let's read it. This was their report to Moses. We entered the land you sent us to explore, and it is indeed a bountiful country, a land flowing with milk and honey. Here's the kind of fruit it produces. They brought back some fruit. Like, look. But the people living there are powerful. Their towns are large and fortified. We saw giants there, the descendants of Anak. Okay? And they were known to be tall people with long ass necks. But again, ain't no such thing as no 4,500 feet man as the book of Enoch talks about. Some of these people could have been, 11 feet tall, 10 feet, 12, 13, who knows? But when you go to talk about, 90 feet tall and above, no, man. More than any, and also the sons of Anak are Hamites. This is a nation that stems from Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Okay? Anak means neck. They had long necks when you go into it. Progenitor of a family or a tribe of giant people in Canaan. These were Canaanites. all right, who were in the land doing all kind of wickedness, pursuing the wisdom of Solomon in the 12th chapter, drinking blood, doing all kind of sacrifices. But see, we had to go take them out of the land, all right? And Joshua and Caleb were like, yeah, we got them. We can do it. But these individuals, right? These spies, listen to what they say, all right? The Amalekites live in Negev. The Hittites, the Jebusites, the Amorites live in the hill country. The Canaanites live along the Mediterranean Sea and along the Jordan Valley. But Caleb tried to quiet the people as they stood before Moses. Let's go at once and take the land. They were like, look, let's go take the land. We can conquer it. But the other men who had explored the land with him disagreed. We can't go up against them, for they are stronger than we are. All right, so they spread this bad report about the land amongst the Israelites. The land we traveled through and explored will devour anyone who goes to live there. All the people we saw were huge. Niggas big. We saw giants there, the descendants of Anak. Next to them, we felt like grasshoppers. So you mean to tell me you they this is what you're using to say giants fell from heaven? I'm not denying that there weren't people that were bigger and taller, but you have to understand these niggas are exaggerating. You said you wanted to hear what the scholars say. Let's go to John Gill, a scholar. It says, and we were in our own sight as grasshoppers, little diminutive creatures in comparison to them, an hyperbolic exaggeration of the greatness of the giants and their own littleness. So these niggas were exaggerating. Okay? The treacherous spies gave an exaggerated report of the physical strength of the people in Canaan. And as you're reading this, you should be able to decipher this. But instead of reading it and understanding it for what it is, you want to read this and tie this to fallen angels. Let's go to the next question. Jasher says Goliath was 9 feet 9, so you need to do more studying. Well, we don't acknowledge the book of Jasher, but 9 feet 9 would, I wouldn't say that was off. 9 feet 9, that's feasible. Okay, that's not no damn, I mean, again, we showed you that the book of Enoch says that men were 4,500 feet tall. Okay, and the book of Jasher is off. The timelines don't mix up. It's adding commentary into biblical stories that don't match up. There's no manuscripts. Right? It just popped up in the 1600s. No manuscripts. Right? We don't acknowledge it. It says that Esau and Nimrod were living at the same time. We don't acknowledge it. Okay? Hebrews 5 and 12. He comes with that. For when the time you ought to be teachers, you need have one to teach you again. So where the hell can I go and learn from you, Mr. Law and Order? Where can I go to learn from you? And you got people liking his comment, or the nigga just sitting there liking his own comments. No, it clearly you need to be taught. If you didn't know that there were nations around before the nation of Israel became a nation. There's an origin to the nation of Israel. Abraham didn't just pop up. He was a descendant of Adam, all right, through Seth, through Enoch, through Methuselah, all right, as well, which I believe Methuselah was Enoch's father, okay, through Noah, through Shem, through Arphaxad. Right? First Chronicles 1 and 17. The sons of Shem, Elam, Assur, and Arphaxad. So when they talk about anti-Semitic or Shemitic, Shem had 5 sons. The one who was the chosen is Arphaxad. That's why in verse 18, and Arphaxad begot Selah, and Selah begot Eber, who's where we get the word Hebrew. All right. He was living around the time of the Tower of Babel being built, him and Peleg. All right. And Peleg, all right, because in his days, the earth was divided, the languages were divided and all of that. And his brother's name was Joktan, okay? Joktan begot Elimadad. And as you keep reading, right, it goes this: Shem, Arphaxad, Selah, Eber, Peleg, Ru, Serug, Nahor, Terah, Abram, the same as Abraham. So where did Shem come from? Noah. Where did Noah come from? All right, he was a descendant of Adam through Seth, who were made in the image of the Most High, meaning they were giving a law. They were giving a way that was supposed to separate them from the nations, man. As you get to Terah, after the flood, all right, we find out he's an idol worshiper. This is why the Lord chose Abraham and separated him from his father's house and gave him, all right, the understanding of what he was supposed to be doing. This is why he offered up a sacrifice. He called on the name of the Lord. All right. And eventually he was circumcised, but it was his faith above the keeping of certain traditions that the Heavenly Father was pleased with, man. So you don't know what the hell you talking about, homie, telling me I need to be taught again. I'm still learning, right? I don't know everything. I'm learning every day. But you need to shut your ass up. The book of Jude said that Enoch left a testimony. Where is that testimony if it's not in the book of Enoch? And bring, scholar, not your emotion, and have truths. All right. Well, yeah, the book of Enoch is quoted. All right. Enoch is quoted in the book of Jude. All right. What I'm telling you is that book of Enoch, that garbage that stems from the Second Temple history, because why would Enoch be writing about history, all right, and different wars and things going on amongst the priesthood, all right, that were going on during the rebuilding of the Second Temple that took place in the Medo-Persian Empire? Huh? And there's all kind of things in the book of Enoch that do not go in line with the scriptures, man. Point blank, period. Now, is there true history in the book of Enoch? Things that actually happened? Yes. What I am telling you is that book of Enoch that they are saying is the book is not, okay, the book, all right, of Enoch. And again, we showed you Moses didn't give us everything. And there's other books. I asked here, how many books in the Bible are mentioned but not in the Bible, like Enoch and Gad the seer? Short answer, about 14 to 18 distinctive books are named in the Bible but are not preserved as a part of biblical canon, depending on how you count overlaps and parallel titles. Okay? In the Old Testament, you have the books of the wars of the Lord. That's mentioned in the book of Numbers. The book of Jasher, that's mentioned in the book of Joshua and 2 Samuel. The book of the Acts of Solomon, that's talked about in the book of Kings, 1 Kings. The book of Nathan the prophet, that's talked about in 1 Chronicles. You don't have that. The book of Gad the seer, that's talked about in 1 Chronicles 29. You don't have that. The book of Chronicles of Samuel the seer, you don't have that. The prophecy of Ahijah, the Shilonite, you don't have that. Okay? The visions of Iddo the seer, you don't have that. The book of Shemaiah the prophet, you don't have that. The book of Jehu the son of Hananiah, you don't have that. The laments of Jeremiah, okay? Now that could be Lamentations, all right? But it says here, distinct from the canonical book of Lamentations. So it could be another one. Either way it goes, we don't have everything. Even in the book of Revelation, the 10th chapter, John tells you that the angel told him not to write certain things that he received. We don't have everything. We have what we need. Okay, and there's even more. Okay, so just because someone, all right, a bunch of Jews, all right, during the Second Temple history leading into the Hellenistic period, established this book, adding all kind of myths and rhetoric, all right, because that's what's in the book of Enoch, a bunch of myths and rhetoric that are not in line with the scriptures. The book of Jasher is even worse. There's more true history in the book of Enoch than in the book of Jasher. The book of Jasher is just a bunch of, convoluted, added dialogues that are not, we can't, that ain't to be trusted. All right, Nimrod killed Esau or something like that. Come on, no, we're not dealing with that. And I've done videos going into all that, and I'm not going into all of that today. Okay, we don't acknowledge the book of Enoch. Okay, and again, there's a video. Let me look on my page. Let me go to my page. There's a video I did that goes into it. If you want more, all right. So it's like, Jake, you put all these comments, and then you end up yourself looking like an asshole. Let's type in Enoch. There's a there's 11 videos I've done going into Enoch. Okay? In this video here, the War of Heaven, the Book of Enoch, and various topics. I go into it right here. The Book of Enoch, particularly in Enoch 7 and 2, states the Nephilim, offspring of fallen angels and humans, were described as being 3,000 cubits tall. Okay? That would make them approximately 4 to 5,000 feet tall. Okay? And as I go in, to some history here. Okay? The Watchers, a group of 200 angels called the Watchers, were assigned to watch over humanity, led by Simjaza. All right. And Zazazel, these angels descended to Mount Hermon and rebelled against God's order. All right. And so forth. We go into particulars in this video. Okay? And God pronounces an eternal judgment upon rebellious angels. All right. And see, every time you see the word angel, it ain't talking about an angel from heaven either. John the Baptist was, all right, called the messenger of the Most High. When you look up the word messengers, angelos is an angel. So the elect are angels, but we're in human form and we have parents. All right. We're bound, all right, to a judgment of this flesh, going back to the fall of Adam. Anyway, also too, on that giant thing, let's go to Genesis the 6th chapter. I wanted to tap into some other information. Let's go to Genesis the 6th chapter real quick. All right. Genesis 6 and 4. There were giants in the earth in those days. And after that, when the sons of God, a nation of people, a lineage of people, came into the daughters of men, right? Now, when you look up the word giants, right, it's Napayal, giants, the Nephilim, all right, is what they started to be called. All right, but let's look here. Properly, a feller, a bully, or a tyrant, all right? A feller, a bully, or a tyrant. Look at the word feller. All right. A person who cuts down trees. All right. And in Genesis, in Isaiah the 14th chapter, okay, the Esau Edom is known as a feller, cutting down trees. And the trees are also nations of people too. Okay. It's various video scriptures we can go into for that. When you go down to the Hebrew Chaldee lexicon, all right, it says Genesis 6 and 4. So all the ancient virgins, all right, the giants in the sky, the constellation of Orion, plural, the greater constellations, the etymology of this is uncertain. Some have compared, all right, it goes to the word, which gig and cast render great, large, and body, but this is incorrect, for it means excellent, noble, skillful. Okay? I prefer with Hebrew interpreters, all right, falling on, attacking, all right. It says, so that not by y'all is intransitive, is of intransitive signification. Those who used it to interpret the passage of Genesis as the fall of angels were accustomed to render Napa Yal Yum fallers, rebels, apostates. Okay? So according to what we're reading in Second Esdras, the 3rd chapter, what was going on, right? That led to the flood. Verse 8, and everyone walked after their own will and did wonderful things before thee and despised thy commandments. And again, in the process of time, thou broughtest a flood upon those that dwelt in the world and destroyed them. Right? But of them, you left Noah. Because Noah was doing the right thing. He was the last one because all of the righteous died before the flood. Noah saw his family, his brethren, his people doing all kind of acts of wickedness, just like you're witnessing your people doing all kind of acts of wickedness. It said, as in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the day of now. That which is then is now. So where are these tall, big ass giants at? The giants, again, let's go to the root word of napayal. Okay? Our people became wicked, tyrants, judging unjustly, just like the priesthood did, all right, throughout the scriptures. You have to understand, history repeats itself, man. At the time Yahweh Shah came on the scene, the priesthood were like the giants of that day. They were the men. They were the one everyone went to. They were the leaders. And they were being tyrants, man. Being wicked. And they was mixing all kind of different philosophies, all right, into the law and coming up with all of these different books and different myths and crap, all right, that polluted the priesthood. This is why Yahweh Shai told you the temple was going to be destroyed. So the word, as a matter of fact, let's get Psalms 82. Psalms 82 and 6. I have said ye are gods, powers, right? And all of you are the children of the Most High, but ye shall die like men and fall like one of the princes. Okay? So we were supposed to be on the earth in the form as Alahayim, gods, but we have fallen, all right, just like any of the other nations. The word fallen here is napal, to fall, to fail, to fall of a violent death, to fall, prostrate oneself before. What were they bowing before? Idols, man. They fell. The mighty men of old fell, just like we've seen historically Israel felling. Okay? Point blank, period, man. And you have to understand this is poetry. Moses is writing these things in parabolic form. Okay? He's not going to go from Genesis, the 5th chapter, giving you the descendants of Adam through Seth, all right, leading up to Noah. And then in the 6th chapter, he's just going to jump to a bunch of fallen angels, the watchers. And then we got to go to the book of Enoch to get the understanding. No, the understanding is right here. See that? All you got to do is go line up on line and precept upon precept in what we do have. It says, Genesis 6 and 3, my spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he is also flesh. What more do you need to hear? These are men in the flesh going off. Okay? Known as giants. Okay? The mighty men, just like Jake is the mighty men of today, but look at them, they're in a fallen state. Mike Tyson, John Jones, LeBron James, they're all in a fallen state, involved in all kind of wickedness. And God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And it repented the Lord that he made man on the earth, and it grieved his heart. So he said, I will destroy man whom I've created. How are you going to drown an angel? Y'all are bugged out, man. Let's go back. Explain Hebrews chapter 9 while you're at it. No, you explain it. How about that be your first video? I need you to show that from Adam to Noah that the Most High said don't deal with a particular group of people, and there were righteous women set aside for the righteous seed. Well, we know in the law there's the order of a concubine. You're not supposed to make marriages with heathen nations. They're supposed to come up under the order of a concubine. Okay? Before these things were written on paper, right? Let's ask chat. Let's ask chat a question here. Before the laws of Moses was written by Moses and the 10 Commandments given to Israel, was there an oral law that was kept from Adam to Noah? Let's just ask that. Because he's this nigga, you know. And maybe you just had questions, right? But hey, you coming at me, I'm coming at you. Yes, there was an ethical and moral law, right? Known and expected before Moses, but no evidence of a formal codified oral law system like later rabbinic tradition. The scripture presents a revealed moral order passed down through conscious command and covenant, not structured legal corpus. God gave direct commands from Adam onward. Adam was commanded, do not eat from a particular tree. Moral accountability, sin, guilt, judgment. A lawgiver command, because Adam was a high priest. Did you know that? And I can prove it, but I'm not going to prove it to you. Okay? I'm not going to prove it to you. All right? And the garden eastward in Eden was the original temple. And Adam was high priest over that temple. And the sons of God were to act as priests, all right, and deal out of that land. And righteousness was supposed to spread everywhere through them. Cain knew murder was wrong. He knew sacrifice mattered. Why was Abel's sacrifice accepted and Cain's wasn't? Because there was a law, there was a moral code, standards passed down, man. It says Enoch and Noah walked with God. That doesn't imply they were walking with him holding his hand. They were obedient unto him. Okay? There it goes. Abraham eventually he kept the laws. So, I mean, although they didn't go in, because there's examples, all right, and I gave you some of those examples. All right. So the laws were already there. We just gave you a few examples. Okay. As a matter of fact, let's ask this. Was the Levirate law practiced in Genesis 38 before the law was given to Moses? Yes. Genesis 38, all right, shows that the Levirate marriage was practiced long before the law of Moses. Okay? Genesis 38 does not show Mosaic law being applied early. It shows an ancient custom that the Mosaic law later regulated and formalized. So a lot of the laws we received and that were written on stone were things that were already being practiced by Adam, that was passed down to Eve and his sons, but Cain represented the wicked one, right? And you can read it, Genesis 38 and 8. And Judah said to Onan, go into your brother's wife and perform the duty of a brother-in-law to her and raise up offspring to your brother. Okay? And when you go into in the law, Deuteronomy 25, 5 through 10, commands that. So we see laws being practiced already. And sometimes you just got to put your two brain cells together. Everything doesn't have to be written out for your ass, man. Certain things got to be what? All right? Accepted and understood by the Spirit, man. He also put this here, all right? And people are agreeing with him because you got a lot of people who really are just off, man. Okay? And see, these warnings are going out and these videos are going up because the Lord is getting ready to bring judgment. You don't want your spirit to be all over the place and rebellious going into Jacob's trouble. Okay? Hebrews 13 and 2. Be not forgetful to entertain strangers, for thereby some have entertained angels unawares. And I do believe that there are certain people that present themselves as human beings sometimes that are actual angels. I believe that. We teach that. So what are you trying to tell me this for? This means that fallen angels came from, heaven and had sex with women? No. So anyway, I just wanted to go through that. Okay, we could have, all right, went into more, but that's the point, man. Shalom.